Hi students, this is A. Mandri Kumar Rajesh. In this video, I would like to teach you Chapter 1, topic Living World. My first question is, are we living Earth or in some other planet? Yes, of course we are in Earth within a complex structure called biosphere. Then what is called biosphere? What is called biosphere? Biosphere can be defined as the region of surface and atmosphere of the earth which is occupied by the living organism is called as biosphere. The region of the surface and atmosphere of the earth which is occupied by the living organism is called as biosphere. In other words, it is a place suitable for the living organism is called as biosphere. Then have you thought about the DNA molecule that is called deoxyribonucleic acid molecule? It is essential for regulation of life because it is a genetic material for most of the organism in the world, and it is made up of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and phosphorus. Thus, the non-living thing and living thing combine together and exist together to make the planet more unique. That means the abiotic component and biotic component combine together to make the universe more unique. So the second question is, how do you categorize or how do you classify the living organism from the non-living thing? So in this video, we are going to focus on how do we classify the living thing from the non-living thing with their characteristic features. Let me give you some of the characteristic features of living things. The first point is growth. The first point is growth, because living thing has to grow. Living thing has to grow to increase in their size or increase in their mass. So the first point is growth. It has to grow. Then the second point is it has a definite structure. It must have a definite structure. That means it must contain cellular structure or cellular organization. So the second point is cellular structure or cellular organization. Then the third point is it has to reproduce for continuity of its life. It has to reproduce for its continuity of its life. So the third point is reproduction. It has to reproduce. Then the fourth point is it has to respond to the stimuli which is come from the external environment. So living organism has to respond to the stimuli which is come from the external environment. So the fourth point is response to stimuli. Then the fifth point is homeostasis. It is an important term. Then I will explain the term afterwards. So the fifth point is homeostasis. Then the sixth point is metabolism. The sixth point is metabolism. Metabolism can be defined as the chemical reaction which takes place in a living cell to provide energy. That is called metabolism. So a living cell has to involve in chemical reaction to provide energy. So these are the 6 points which is important to define the characteristic features of living organism. So I am going to explain the 6 points. Let's go to the board to describe the first point, growth. So living thing has tendency to grow in their size, but in some case of non-living thing also capable of grow in their size. So what is the difference between living thing and non-living thing? Normally in non-living thing, the growth is driven by the accumulation of matters from the external factors or outside. For example, mountain. For example, mountain, boulders, and sand mound or sand dune. So mountains can grow by the accumulation of matters from the external factors or outside, and that type of growth is called extrinsic growth, and that type of growth is called extrinsic growth. And extrinsic growth takes place in non-living things, while in the case of living things, the growth takes place inside the body, by means of cell division, and it increases the mass of an individual and it increases the number of cells. So in the case of living thing, the growth takes place inside the body, and that type of growth is called intrinsic growth. So intrinsic growth takes place in living organism. Therefore in living organism, the growth is from within, that is inside the body, while in the case of non-living thing, the growth is from the outside or the external factor. However, the growth is not a determining property of living organism, because non-living thing can also grow by their extrinsic growth, because non-living thing can also grow by the extrinsic growth. By this reason, the growth is not considered as a determining property of living organism. Then I am going to explain the second point, cellular structure. Cellular structure or cellular organization. So all living organism is made up of cells. All living organisms are made up of cells. So cell is the basic unit of all organism. Now I give you a flow chart. From that flow chart you can conclude cell is a basic unit of all living organism. So group of cells combine to form tissue, tissues. Group of tissues combine to form organ, Group of organs combine to form organ system. Group of organ system combine to form organism. And group of organism combine to form population, and group of population combine to form community, and group of community combine to form an ecosystem. So cell is the basic unit of all living organism. In cells there are two types. They are prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. So pro means primitive. Karyo means nucleus. Karyo means nucleus. So in prokaryotic cell, the nucleus are primitive in nature. That means they are not well defined nucleus and they lack nucleus membrane. They lack nucleus membrane and membrane bound organelles like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi bodies. Example for prokaryotic cells are blue-green algae and bacteria While in the case of eukaryotic, U means true, then karyo means nucleus. So eukaryotic cell contains true nucleus, that means well defined nucleus with nuclear membrane, and it also contains membrane bound organelles like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies. An example for eukaryotic cell is amoeba, Spirogyra, etc. So cell is an important factor for living organism. So without a cell, that is called as non-living thing. So if a living organism, if a thing is called as living, it must contains cell. So cell is a determination property of living organism. Then I am going to explain the third point, reproduction. Reproduction is another important property of living organism, and it is also essential feature of living organism by which it can reproduce its own kind to maintain the progeny of species. And reproduction can be divided into two types. They are sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, two parents are involved and gametes are formed. By sexual reproduction, the recombination takes place, that means variation takes place and leads to evolution. So the evolution takes place by only the sexual reproduction due to recombination. While in the case of asexual reproduction, only one parent is involved and young ones resembles the parent and there is no recombination and there is no evolution. So asexual reproduction is used by lower organism. Asexual reproduction is used by lower organism. Reproduction means refers to only sexual reproduction. Reproduction means only refers to sexual reproduction. But in the case of asexual reproduction, it is only used in lower organisms. For example, gonidia formation in fungi, binary fission in bacteria and amoeba, then regeneration in planaria, then fragmentation in Spirogyra, then budding in Hydra, and these are all some of the examples of asexual reproduction which takes place in lower organism. Then growth is increase in the number of cells or increase in the mass of individual. So in case of unicellular organism also, the reproduction is achieved by increase in the number of cells, So growth and reproductions are synonymous. The growth and reproductions are synonymous and it cannot be used as a determining property of living organism. In addition to, in some organisms like mule, then worker bees, then in some human being, they are not able to reproduce due to impotent. So should we consider that organisms are dead or non-living organisms? So reproduction is not a determining property of living organisms by these reasons. So it is not a concrete reason to differentiate living and non-living. Then I am going to conclude this video with this information. The remaining points will be explained in the next video. So please stay home, stay safe. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you.